It was Halloween night in the small town of Millfield, and the streets were filled with excited children dressed in costumes, running from house to house, collecting candy. But little did they know, a group of killer clowns were lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. The clowns, led by a sinister figure known as Pennywise, had been terrorizing the town for weeks, leaving a trail of bodies in their wake. No one knew where they came from or why they were doing this, but the town was living in fear. The story begins with a group of teenagers, Jake, Sarah, Ryan, and Amber, who decide to go out trick-or-treating together on Halloween night. They had been friends since childhood and always stuck together on Halloween. They were excited to collect candy and have a good time, but little did they know, their night would take a terrifying turn. As they walked through the streets, they noticed that something was off. The houses were dark, and there were no signs of life. They shrugged it off and assumed that people were just getting into the Halloween spirit. But as they made their way deeper into the town, they began to feel uneasy. They heard strange noises and saw shadows moving in the distance, but they couldn't tell what it was. They were about to turn back when they saw a group of clowns standing in the middle of the road. The clowns were wearing creepy masks, and their clothes were covered in blood. The teenagers tried to run, but the clowns chased after them. They were able to outrun them for a little while, but the clowns were faster and stronger than they expected. They caught up to them and dragged them into an abandoned house. Inside the house, the teenagers were thrown into separate rooms and left alone in the dark. Jake was thrown into a room with a clown standing in the corner, staring at him with empty eyes. Sarah was thrown into a room with a clown holding a bloody knife. Ryan was thrown into a room with a clown holding a chainsaw, and Amber was thrown into a room with a clown holding a noose. The teenagers were terrified and had no idea what was going to happen to them. They could hear the clowns laughing and whispering in the darkness, and they knew that they were in grave danger. They tried to find a way out, but the doors were locked and the windows were boarded up. As the night went on, the teenagers were forced to confront their fears and fight for their survival. Jake discovered that he had a hidden strength and was able to overpower the clown in his room. Sarah used her intelligence and quick thinking to outsmart the clown with the knife. Ryan used his courage and determination to take down the clown with the chainsaw. And Amber used her fear as a weapon and was able to defeat the clown with the noose. With the clowns defeated, the teenagers were able to escape the house and make their way back to town. But their nightmare was far from over. Pennywise, the leader of the clowns, was still out there, and he was determined to finish what he started. The teenagers knew that they had to stop Pennywise and put an end to the terror that was gripping their town. They teamed up with the local sheriff, who was also investigating the clowns' killings, and set out to track down the clowns and bring them to justice. The journey to find the clowns was filled with danger and obstacles, but the teenagers were determined. They learned that the clowns were not from the town, but from a town far north. As the teenagers continued their journey to track down Pennywise and his clowns, they stumbled upon a hidden clown circus deep in the woods. The circus was unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was a dark, twisted version of a traditional circus, filled with eerie carnival games and attractions. The clowns were performing death-defying stunts and cruel acts, as a captive audience of victims looked on in terror. Jake, Sarah, Ryan, and Amber knew they had to act fast to save the hostages and put an end to the clown circus once and for all. They split up, each taking on different parts of the circus to cover more ground. As Jake made his way through the games, he suddenly heard a scream coming from the main tent. He rushed over to find Sarah trapped in a deadly game of whack-a-mole, where the mole was actually a live person. The clowns were taking turns hitting the person with large mallets, causing them to scream in agony. Jake tried to intervene, but the clowns turned on him, wielding their mallets as weapons. In an intense struggle, Jake managed to defeat the clowns and save Sarah, but they were now being pursued by the rest of the circus performers. Ryan and Amber, meanwhile, were investigating a creepy attraction known as the Hall of Mirrors. They heard rumors that the attraction was cursed, and anyone who entered never came back out. As they made their way through the maze of mirrors, they encountered their own reflections, but something was off. Their reflections were distorted, twisted versions of themselves, taunting them with their deepest fears and insecurities. As they tried to find a way out, they realized that the mirrors were closing in on them, trapping them inside. They could hear the clowns laughing and jeering from the outside, and they knew they were running out of time. Just as they thought all was lost, they discovered a secret door leading to a hidden room. Inside, they found evidence that the clown circus was being controlled by a powerful force, and that their leader, Pennywise, was not acting alone. They realized that they were up against an evil entity that was beyond their understanding. With this newfound knowledge, the teenagers regrouped and continued their mission to stop Pennywise and the clown circus. The final showdown was intense and terrifying, as they faced off against an army of clowns and the mysterious force behind them. But through their bravery and determination, they were able to defeat their enemies and save the hostages. As they left the clown circus behind, the teenagers were left to grapple with the horrors they had witnessed and the true nature of evil. They knew that the memories of their experience would haunt them for the rest of their lives, but they were proud of what they had accomplished and the lives they had saved. They left the woods as changed individuals, with a deeper understanding of fear and the bravery it takes to face it head-on. As the years passed, the story of the clowns and their reign of terror over the town of Millfield became a legend. People would tell the story to their children, warning them to be careful on Halloween night. The teenagers who had defeated Pennywise and his clowns became legends in their own right, and the town honored them for their bravery and heroism. However, despite their hero status, the teenagers continued to struggle with the aftermath of the events. They suffered from nightmares and flashbacks, and many of them turned to substance abuse in an attempt to cope with the trauma they had experienced. They were haunted by the memory of the clowns and the fear they had instilled in the town. Ryan, who had always been fearless and determined, became distant and paranoid. He struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder and was unable to shake the fear that the clowns would return. He became an alcoholic and was often seen wandering the streets at night, muttering to himself. Sarah, who had always been intelligent and quick-thinking, became introverted and isolated. She was consumed by guilt for not being able to save her friends and struggled with survivor's guilt. She poured herself into her work and became a successful scientist, but she was never able to shake the memories of that fateful Halloween night. Jake, who had discovered a hidden strength within himself, became reckless and impulsive. He struggled with anger and a desire for revenge, and he was often seen getting into fights and causing trouble. He joined the military in an attempt to channel his aggression and became a highly decorated soldier, but the memories of the clowns still plagued him. Amber, who had used her fear as a weapon, became withdrawn and quiet. She struggled with depression and anxiety, and was often seen sitting alone in quiet corners, lost in thought. She became an artist and used her paintings as a way to process her emotions and come to terms with the trauma she had experienced. Despite their struggles, the teenagers never lost the bond they had formed on that fateful Halloween night. Years passed, and the teenagers grew old. They would gather for a reunion every Halloween and reminisce about their experiences. They would tell their children and grandchildren about their bravery and heroism, and they would share their memories with the next generation. The legend of the clowns and the teenagers who defeated them lived on, and the town of Millfield was forever changed by the events of that fateful Halloween night. In the end, the teenagers were able to find peace and acceptance for what had happened. They had faced their fears and emerged victorious, and they had saved their town from a terrible evil. They had formed a bond that would never be broken, and they had become heroes in the eyes of the town and the world. They had faced their demons and emerged stronger, and they would always be remembered as the teenagers who defeated the clowns on Halloween night. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please like and subscribe and help this channel grow. We have more scary stories for you to listen to and to keep you up at night.